Okay. Welcome everybody to the University of Ottawa. Bienvenue tout le monde à l'Université d'Ottawa. Je m'appelle Paul Haslam, je suis professeur ici à l'École de développement international et mondialisation. Et aujourd'hui, nous sommes très fiers d'avoir ici à l'université, d'être ici pour présenter une conversation avec le secrétaire général de l'OEA, Almagro. Surtout, on va parler de le rôle de l'OEA dans les nouveaux défis pour l'Amérique latine. So my name is Paul Haslam. I'm professor at the School of International Development here at the University of Ottawa. We're very pleased to have with us today Secretary General Luis Almagro of the Organization of American States. And we'll be talking a bit today about challenges for the OAS, the Organization of American States, in Latin America. So first of all, before we begin, I'd just like to thank some of the people that made this amazing event possible. Firstly, the office of the Secretary General's office, Monica Leroy, merci beaucoup. Been very helpful in helping us organize everything. The Canadian International Council, National Capital Branch, Latin America and Caribbean Group, including Stephen Barani, Laura McDonald, and particularly Ambassadors Alan Cohen and Paul Duran, who will be offering their comments and insights to conclude this event. I'd also like to thank the Center for International Policy Studies, the CIPS, and particularly Stephanie France et son équipe qui a fait une organisation merveilleuse de tout ce qu'il fallait faire pour faire cet événement. So the plan for this event is to, the Secretary General will make a few introductory remarks, after which he and I will converse about the role of the Organization of American States on some of the hot issues of the day in Latin America for around 20 or 30 minutes as time permits. After that, we'll open questions to the audience. We have really an amazing audience here today. We have professors, students, ambassadors, former ambassadors, diplomats. So there's a lot of knowledge in this audience, and I think the best thing is to turn as much as possible of this event over to the audience to allow for a really amazing conversation. So, as many of you know, Secretary General Luis Almagro was elected to lead the Organization of American States in March 2015. Previously, he was Foreign Minister of Uruguay between 2010 and 2015 in the government of President Mujica, and elected National Senator in 2014. As Foreign Minister, he worked to defend human and civil rights across the hemisphere, received prisoners from Guantanamo, welcomed Syrian refugees, worked to get Uruguay elected to the UN Security Council, expanded Uruguayan trade, access to the United States, and worked to build the new regionalism of UNASUR and CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. Many of the things that I think a Canadian Foreign Minister would be very happy accomplishing. In 2014, Foreign Policy magazine named him a leading global thinker. Only one of only 10 such decision makers in the region conferred this distinction. As OAS Secretary General, Luis Almagro has been tough and outspoken. His vision for the OAS has emphasized human rights and the battle against exclusion and inequality. His inaugural speech envisioned a reinvigorated OAS closer to the people that contributes to the resolution of problems that affect the many peoples of the Americas. He hopes for the reintegration of Cuba into the OAS, and most notably, the Secretary General has distinguished himself by confronting the creeping authoritarianism in Venezuela, about which we will talk about more. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Secretary General Luis Almagro.
This introduction was too good to spoil it, so I will be very brief. You know that OAS theme is more life and more effort. It's a call to action for young people to engage in international affairs, to promote democracy, human rights, development and security. We must be at the vanguard of the struggle for democracy. This goes beyond an election every 4 or 5 years, and implies the full exercise of civil and political rights every day. The Organization of American States has a firm engagement with the people of our hemisphere. We must be addressing the great challenges our region faces. Maybe the most urgent of these challenges is inequality among our people in terms of access to their rights. We live in one of the parts of the world that has a tremendous natural abundance of wealth, yet is also marked by great inequality. We cannot sit quietly and accept a reality in which opportunities to move ahead are denied to those who come from a poor family or are born outside the cities or face discrimination due to their race, gender, or sexual orientation. I understand that many of you may know a lot about the Organization of American States. It is my interest not only to inform you about the OES, but to motivate your active participation in our organization focus in the main issues that we have in the Americas. The OES is the foremost political forum of the Americas. It exists to serve 34 members who have committed themselves in various agreements to abide by democratic principles and to recognize a series of rights. So the OES would not be fulfilling its purpose if it did not work to fulfill these commitments. This is not an easy task because while everybody applauds these agreements on paper, when it comes to using them to address our sometimes poor records in democracy, human rights, development, or security, people quickly grow uncomfortable. The ethical and moral values that we lay out in law and legal text means little if we do not work to make them a daily reality for the people in the Americas. The organization, as was said, is the world's oldest regional international organization, comprising of all the independent republics of the Western Hemisphere. Indeed, the countries of our hemisphere, the Americas, have a long history of seeking peace through multilateral relations. The first example was the Congress of Panama convened by Simón Bolívar in 1826. The charter of the OES was signed in 1948, but its origins date back to the 1889 convention. That year, the government of the United States convened the first International Conference of American States, which was held in Washington, D.C., to promote the peaceful settlement of disputes and to improve business and international trade. From then on, the countries have created an inter-American system of institutions to help strengthen multilateral relations on key issues, such as the Pan-American Health Organization, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, the Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, the Inter-American Commission for Women, the Inter-American Development Bank. In addition to being the most important international forum for political debate and dialogue in the hemisphere, the OES also provides technical advice and cooperation on the issues more affecting the citizens of the Americas. As I told you, our institutional theme, More Rights for More People, is a call to action to resolve the severe lack of opportunities and rights that exist for the most vulnerable citizens of America, for Afro-descendants, indigenous people, women, migrants, and minorities. In the last 20 years, the countries of the Americas have made great progress in economic development and electoral democracy, and yet the level of inequity has grown so much that the Latin America and the Caribbean is considered the most inequitable region in the world. But here also there is a huge problem with income inequality. The New York Times reports in June that the top 1% in the United States captured 85.1% of the total income from 2009 to 2013. Today, the work of the OES is focused on 4 pillars that are intertwined and mutually reinforcing: democracy, human rights, development, and security. In the area of democracy, the OES is a world pioneer organization in promoting and strengthening institutions. This commitment is explained in the OAS Inter-American Democratic Charter, which was agreed in 2001. The OAS Electoral Observation Mission monitors general elections throughout the hemisphere and offers recommendations to ensure free and fair elections for all. The OAS Inter-American Program of Judicial Facilitators improve access to justice for millions of citizens in rural areas by training local community leaders. The OAS mission to support the fight against corruption and impunity in Honduras works to support the country in combating corruption and impunity with all sectors of society. The OAS has a long history of defending human rights through the Inter-American Commission and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. More recently, we have created the Secretariat for Access to Rights and Equity. We still have a long way of work to work. Democracy and human rights are not complete missions and that require our permanent work. I will then close the dialogue.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to have you here. We're very happy to have this opportunity to talk about the role of the Organization of American States. The OAS has actually been important to me for quite a long time, not only as a researcher, but actually the Organization of American States funded my doctoral research through the PRA awards. So for a long time, I've been a very keen supporter of the OAS. So I'd like to begin by asking you to elaborate a little bit on the role that you think the OAS should and can play in the Americas. You touched on some of it in your introductory comments, but also how it interacts or even competes with other hemispheric or other regional projects in the Americas, such most notably CELAC. Is there an opportunity for joint cooperation, or as some suggested, are those organizations a little competitive in the same areas of competence?
It's not our approach. It is not our approach. Our feeling is that the Organization of American States has its own life and provides solutions according to completely different instruments and tools than the rest of the organizations in the region. In fact, the OAS needs very strong sub-regional and regional organizations like Mercosur, MASUR, CELAC, SICA, CARICOM. That would be extremely convenient for the work of the organization. And the thing is that, as we were saying, an organization that was born in 1889, imagine that all the legal instruments that they have till now, all the mechanisms that it has to protect those legal instruments and those conventions, those charters about democracy and human rights, are especially unique. And no other organization in the region, it has the same kind of conventions and charters, and it's not organized in the same way the Organization of American States is. Still, we would like, the more we can permeate the rest of the organizations with the principles and values of the Organization of American States, I think the better will be for the whole continent. And the more that we interact and we cooperate, the better will be in order to avoid duplicating the work or the solutions or the commitment to some issues. The thing is that since we started, we have been trying very hard in order to establish connections, links, and programs of cooperation with with the rest of the organizations, especially CELAC and MASUR. So far, it has not been possible. I think some political issues crossed there in the middle that didn't allow that possibility. But still we can keep working, and we have some expectations that with the new presidency of CELAC and with a new Secretary General of UNASUR, we would be able to implement a couple of projects that will be of interest of everybody. All the countries in UNASUR and CELAC, practically, they belong to the Organization of American States. They are obliged by our Inter-American Democratic Charter, by the Inter-American Human Rights Convention, and so on, the American Convention to Fight Corruption. All the tools are very necessary for the life of interacting among the countries in CELAC and UNASUR and the rest of CARICOM and SICA, for example. So I hope that we will be able to implement some solutions in the future. We don't compete. When you see the work of the rest of the organization, the work we do from the OAS, you can see that practically we don't cross anywhere according to the principles and values that we have been defending.
Okay, thank you very much. How do you characterize then the strengths and the weaknesses of the Organization of American States?
The biggest asset that our organization has is, as I said, are the legal instruments, the conventions and charters. That is more important than maybe the most beautiful building in Washington, the 17th century Constitution of white marble and the nice statues around the park. But the conventions, human rights conventions, conventions to fight corruption, the Inter-American Democratic Charter, those are the biggest assets. That make us work every single day, because we have to be committed to them. I mean, if we keep them in the archives or in the library of the organization, then they are not useful at all. Then, if we don't use them, the level of importance of the organization deteriorates and goes to the margin of the political solutions that exist in the region. So we need to keep that working every day, and that is the most important thing that we can do in the organization. The weaknesses are, lately has been mainly the financial issues. We have to do, since the times I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, the only thing I used to heard about the organization, it was that the organization was in a financial crisis, and that for 5-6 years. And so there are only two ways to get out of a financial crisis. One is to increase contributions, but if you ask the countries these days to increase their contributions, they suffer nervous breakdowns, and that makes that solution impossible. The second way is to cut expenses, and so we have a very drastic, dramatic exercise of cutting 12% of the budget of the organization. So there we are, in much better and healthier condition, and doing the same work. Still, we have to find some structural solution for the Inter-American Human Rights Commission that can have a stable budget that is not affected by circumstances of donors or contributors. So that is something that we need to work for the next General Assembly. The organization itself, so far, we have jumped out of the crisis with that solution.
And some countries are still in arrears, are they? Have not made their full contribution?
Some countries are, I myself a debtor all my life. I don't blame anybody. But and also it makes it very hard to. But we found a solution with Brazil. They made a chronogram for payment, and that we highly appreciate. The agreement that we had, and I think it's very convenient for the organization. of the top 5 contributors. The other one that is sort of late is Venezuela. That I think some political conditions will keep that thing like that for a while.
Yeah. Okay, well, actually, then let's talk about Venezuela. Which is goes straight to the elephant in the room.
Okay.
So, which is the deteriorating situation in Venezuela, both political and economic. You've been remarkably outspoken regarding the authoritarian drift and sort of struggle between different levels of government in Venezuela. How do you feel that that situation is evolving, and what tools does the Organization of American States have to confront the situation?
You know, that is that has been part of the most substantial work that we have to do during 2016 and part of 2015. The problem with Venezuela is that everybody knows for quite a while. At least we have been denouncing that since March, April this year. The problems are very easy to see. I mean, is the recognition of the legislative branch of government, of the National Assembly, that needs its constitutional power to be reintegrated to them. The existence of political prisoners, the obstacles that exist for the people to exercise their political and electoral rights according to the Constitution, that means the recall referendum, and the humanitarian and financial crisis that exists in the country, and that specifically at this moment that we are talking is exploding practically everywhere in the country. We have received information at least of 9 focus of violence in Venezuela today, in 9 different provinces of the country. And that the thing is that since then everybody has been jumping around this problem, no, and running around these problems. And 9 months later, we still have the same problems. So these problems were not properly addressed through the mechanism of dialogue that was coordinated by President Zapatero, and that the Vatican joined 1 month ago. And we are still facing the same situation, the same conditions, and they are getting worse. I mean, if you see how the situation is these days, since dialogue started, the National Assembly has lost 2 more of expansions, like the possibility to have a political trial to the president and the possibility to elect the members of the National Electoral Council. At the table 2, negotiations, table 2, practically the government kept the possibility of freeing the political prisoners whenever they want, whoever they want, in the time they want. At the table 3, there was something like this insistence with the problem of an economic war against Venezuela. I think the main problem that Venezuelans have is the lack of capacity of the government to provide solutions to the people, to those specific needs of the people. At the table 4, they was about the electoral chronogram, and the only electoral right that existed there that was at the table was the recall referendum, and that was practically specifically resigned on that negotiation table. So that the situation not only was bad but got worse during this process, and that is where I think it's not the right thing to do. I mean, you cannot fool around the problems. I mean, there is a saying in Spanish that no matter how many times you turn around, your bomb is always on your back. And that is the problem with the problems of Venezuela. I mean, they have done a lot of ground around the problems in the last 9 months, and they have not been able to fix them. About the characteristic of the negotiations, I cannot, I don't have an opinion, but for me the opinion is purely institutional. I mean, how you reintegrate the constitutional power to the National Assembly, the constitutional rights to the people, how you solve the economic and financial crisis and the humanitarian and social crisis that affect the country, how you free the political prisoners as soon as possible. Those are the things that have to be addressed, and those the things that have to be fixed. So far, those things are not addressed properly. They will remain there, and they will keep affecting the political and social and economic development of the country.
In June, you called a meeting of the Permanent Council to discuss the possible invocation of Article 20 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which is essentially would define an alteration. Yes. How did that go?
Yeah, it went fine, considering it was the first time in many years that Venezuela lost an election in the Permanent Council, and it was to open the discussion and the collective evaluation according to the Article 20 of the Charter. The times for the collective evaluation has gone a little bit long, and I think it will go a little bit longer still, because first of all, the organization has always given an opportunity to dialogue. We have had a double track. First of all, denouncing, so government wouldn't feel impunity for their wrongdoings, and on the other side, we were given opportunity to the dialogue, practically all. That reached the point where the dialogue was a complete failure. That was the last, that everybody realized that was a complete failure. We warned a little bit about that before. And then they passed to a next step, that was when the Vatican joined the negotiations. So far, for us, the Vatican is sitting there. This will be very difficult for the organization to move ahead. I mean, we have we feel that the Vatican may have a moral force that may have a push about the needs of the country. But as I said, we are also we are not impatient, but the people of Venezuela is growing impatient, and that is something that will need to be addressed. I mean, the situation today, for example, shows clearly that you cannot play with the needs of the people at the negotiations table. You have to address the problems of the people. You have to fix the problem. And the Organization of American States has to be closer to the interest and the needs of the people, not those of the negotiation table. Our democratic charter is very clear. It is very clear that the democracy is a right of the people, and it's an obligation of the government to promote it and defend it. That right of the people is the one that has to be addressed by the organization because it's requested in the charter.
Obviously we have to see how the Vatican negotiations go. Do you think that if that is unsuccessful, that the membership of the Organization of American States, the country governments, would be willing to invoke a suspension of Venezuela for using the American Democratic Charter?
That is, if you see the articles from 17 to 21 of the Charter, that is the last solution. I mean, if you see that those articles, it's a very constructive work, the one of the process under the Democratic Charter. I mean, they ask, they request diplomatic missions, good offices, negotiations, and only if everything fails, then it can move ahead. But this suspension of any country is a painful thing for the organization. So we prefer a solution before, but the solution, of course, a solution really addressing the problems. I mean, not a paper or a communique that those we have seen in the last months in Venezuela.
Thank you. Obviously, although the Organization of American States has really built a protection of democracy regime since at least the Declaration of Cartagena in 1985, the Democratic Charter is clearly the most powerful instrument, strongest tool to protect democracy in the region. Do you feel that the Democratic Charter needs to be developed further, or that it's sort of an adequate instrument to the task of defending democracy in the region as it is now?
Yes. Look, in the last months I have read the Democratic Charter many times, back and forward. And there is nothing I would change here. If you see, it's a very, it gives responsibility to everybody. I mean, for example, Article 20 says the Secretary General or any member state, small or big, should defend the principles of democracy established in that charter, and of course request for the pertinent solutions. If you see the fundamental elements established in Article 3 and the fundamentals of the practice of democracy established in Article 4 is practically are the basics for a democratic system to work properly. And the report we presented the 23rd of June was very much going point by point on those elements and fundaments. So the thing is that the charter needs, at a certain moment, needs commitment of the country. If the countries can put their interests a little bit on the side and act based on principles, that is what it moves the Democratic Charter, what it moves the Democratic Charter on the 23rd of June, for example. That is the thing that to move ahead. And so I would leave the tools and the mechanisms that we have there as they are. They are very precise, and they can be extremely efficient if you put them to work.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to a slightly different topic then. You've also talked about wanting to see Cuba reintegrated in the inter-American system. Certainly the restoration of diplomatic relations by President Obama and Cuba's participation in the 2015 Panama Summit of the Americas were steps in that direction. How do you see the potential reintegration of Cuba moving forward?
You know that Cuba was suspended in 1962. In 2009, the OAS approved a resolution lifting the suspension. Then, but giving the initiative to Cuba to start negotiations with the organization in order to reintegrate, rejoin the organization. And then the Cubans have never taken this initiative since 2009. 7 years have passed practically, and there have not been any movement from the Cuban side. I understand it in many ways. Cuba has a very positive agenda with practically all countries in the continent, now including the United States, so far.
So far.
We'll
see in 2 months.
We'll talk again in February. And that positive agenda, they may need to keep it. And the problem between Cuba and the organization is that since 1962 we have grown in 2 different branches. The political systems that the Latin Americans and Caribbean countries have implemented since 1962 are mainly based on representative democracy. And we have created since then all the Inter-American Human Rights Conventions of any kind, being the first system in the world to individually protect human rights. The Inter-American Democratic Charter, the Resolution 1080 to protect representative democracy. And the Cuban system, you see that it looks a little bit different from that. And I cannot take 34 countries to that system. I need to bring Cuba to this one. And they are, from what I see, they are still very far to start this negotiation. They need to go through a process of openness, politically, economically, socially. Their society is far from what is requested according to the Inter-American system. Their political system is far from what is requested from the Inter-American system. Economy, we don't say so much, they can organize it the way they want, but of course it has an impact on the society and the way the society. I think the Cubans have resolved many crucial issues that exist in this continent, and that those are facts. I mean, some millions of kids, children sleep in the streets in this continent, but not one in Cuba. Some millions of kids starve in this continent, but not one in Cuba, no matter how bad the conditions, economic or social conditions can be. So they have achieved some things, but they need to achieve a little more in order to start this negotiation. So far, they are too far to take that initiative that is requested in the resolution of 2009.
I see. Thank you. Well, I'd like to turn it over to the audience soon, so I just have one more question that relates more specifically to Canada and Canada's interests in the hemisphere. Our current government does not have a specific regional Americas policy as the previous government had before it. And of course, the previous Liberal governments of Jean Chrétien and also Conservative government Brian Mulroney had very active engagement in the regional multilateralism of the Americas, specifically the OAS. For anyone who might be advising Minister Dion about the potential role of Canada in the hemisphere and in the OAS in particular, what would you advise?
To increase their financial contribution. And that is fine, and the rest is fine too. Canada is a very special country in the OAS. I have seen the Canadians working, and they are always attached to principles, and they are these things like democracy and human rights are things that they really feel them, and any time that they declare, they make a statement, or they try to push a solution, these principles are substantially behind what they are pushing forward. And so I will ask Canada to change anything. I mean, the better relation that they have, Canada has with Latin Americans and Caribbean countries, the better for the organization, the more trade, the more investment, more cooperation, all that very substantial in order to increase the partnership of Canada in the region. But according to what we deal in the organization, these very annoying principles of in democracy and human rights, we always have Canada in the front line defending them. So I will let them work, and I will do it in a very relaxed way.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. At this point, I'd like to open up the questions to the audience, and we'll leave around 10 minutes at the end for the commentary by Ambassadors Colin and Durant.
Bonjour, so if you'd like to ask a question, we're going to ask that you raise your hand, stand up, state your name and your affiliation, and then you can proceed with your question. So, voulez-vous que je répète en français? Non? Ça va? Perfect.
Hi, my name is Tom Burgess. I'm the Deputy Director of the Australian National Center for Latin American Studies at the ANU, Australian National University, and a visiting scholar at Carleton University. Thanks very much for your comments, Secretary General, and I probably arguably we've never had a better time and a more important time for the OAS, given all of the, I guess, tumultuous events that we have going on in various parts of the Americas. It's not crisis, but uncertainty, I think, is a better way to put it. Here's my question, and I specialize mostly in Brazilian foreign policy, which I think you're probably quite familiar with. How are you, as the Secretary General, going to get past what's essentially a knee-jerk anti-Americanism throughout South America, certainly, and parts of Central America, and get countries in the region to look at the OAS as being something other than a proxy for whatever's going on in the White House? And more particularly, if the Trump Republican administration goes the way it might well go, going back to some of the battle names you remember from the past, how are you going to keep this sort of idea going through, that you're truly independent and that you can actually be the forum for the constructive work that you should be?
The only way that exists, I mean, I'm truly independent. I don't mind. I am not attached to my position. I risk it any time that there is a problem in the continent. I am not attached to ideological prejudice. I just go for the issues and for the problems in the continent. I don't want any administration to be sympathetic to me or to be nice to me. That is apart from anything that I may consider. I have to just evaluate things according to the political responsibilities that the Secretary General has, objectively speaking, what they do with the principles and values of the inter-American system and how they deal with the principles and values of democracy. So I seriously consider the United States one partner more within the organization. This one vote more just has also the this way that is the only hemispherical organization, that political organization that the United States belong, and where they can participate in hemispherical discussions. But if you see the recent history of the organization, the very recent history of the organization, is not that the decisions of the organization have gone in promoting or defending USA positions in the region. Practically, that it has been always something very tough to achieve for the United States. And as I said, for example, sometimes I had a completely different discussions with members of the Congress and members of the political system in the United States, that they were seeing that the Organization for American States was just a platform for them to be criticized, and that they were like getting some pain from there. I think it's not one way or the other. It's mainly where the United States stands when there is a problem in the continent, and they are attached to the basic principles and rules that we have in the organization. If they do that, it will be better for them in order to achieve results within the organization. If they don't do that, then we may have to confront them like we have done in the past. That is the logic of work that we have. We don't feel that we need to stigmatize anybody or to prejudge any presidential management that it may come to the USA government. I think we need to focus on what are the responsibilities of the USA according to the Charter of the OAS and the Inter-American Democratic Charter and every single convention that we have created lately. And that's it. And the rest, the only thing that is a pattern of obligation for me are the responsibilities that I have according to these instruments. And I will fulfill them. If they tell me that I belong, I don't forget that even this country believed that I was the candidate of the ALBA. And then suddenly I was a CIA agent. So, and all that without a stop in between. So, I mean, what people say, I mean, I cannot be part of the judgment I have to make about situations and problems in the country.
Hi, my name is Ruby Becker. I'm a professor here at the university. I also teach at Colgate University. And I have a quick question to ask you. Given the evidence that we have regarding the quality of democracy and the impact that the economic system has on the quality of democracy, or at least the belief in the people in the democratic system, and given the economic imbalances within the Americas as a whole, not just Latin America, but within the Americas as a whole, it points to perhaps some changes in the system and not necessarily just minor changes within every country specifically. So I'm wondering, is the OAS looking at a bigger perception of sort of the economic system within the region, or is it more specific to each country?
This is a study we made. We did it to evaluate the quality of democracy in the continent. Here you have 3 countries. Canada is one of them. That means those that they are sitting here, they are in good shape, their political system. Then here you have some countries that they are in sort of good shape. These are not so good. There's a very specific case that is structurally bad. This is a specific case that is going down. This study that we made, analyzing something like hundreds of conditions for democracy, then we repeated it for every single pillar of the organization, for access to rights and equity, for security, and for development. The thing is that the countries are practically in the same place in all the pillars. So when the political system doesn't work, when the political system, the democracy is not working properly in the Americas, this is a study that we made in the Americas, because we have not analyzed other parts of the world. When the political system doesn't work properly, when there is lack of dialogue, lack of possibility of political participation of the society with the citizenry is a low level and has a very low level standard of participation, when civil and political rights are not respected in full extent, then the rest of the social and economic system is also affected. You can see it in the case of, particularly in the case of Venezuela that we analyzed before. So far, the political system started going down faster and faster, deteriorating different conditions, political conditions, civil and political rights. The rest, like the political system was not able to provide solutions to better manage the economy and the social issues and of course the security issues. And that brought Venezuela to some incredible standards, incredible if we consider where Venezuela was 20 years ago. Is the second most violent country in the world. I mean, the people, 35,000 people die in Venezuela every year for violent death. I mean, it's more, in 10 years have died more people in Venezuela violence than in the whole 50 years conflict in Colombia. That died 250,000 or 280,000. So that it means that when you adjust the mechanism of the political system, you make it work properly. It's not affected by corruption. It's not affected by insane financing of political campaigns. When it's not affected by weak institutions, then the rest, sort of, the political system can make the rest work. And that is beyond any ideological discussion. It's about how a system, a social political system should work. And so that if the thing is for the Americans, the better we make our democracies work, the better the economic and the social system work. And that is it's a fact.
Thank you. My name is Victoria Ramirez. I'm a Venezuelan student here at the university. You talked that applying the democratic charter and sanctioning Venezuela would be one of the last resorts, considering dialogue is one of the most important forms of solving political conflict. I'm just wondering, have the dialogues led anywhere? Are there any tables of negotiations planned in the future? And is the Venezuelan government being compliant in those tables, and what's the role of the OAS playing in even perhaps influencing a referendum in the future?
It's not one of the last, it's the last measure that we can take. The thing is, I always wanted any dialogue to be within the organization and within the democratic charter. Why? Because dialogue or good offices or diplomatic missions, according to the democratic charter, have to provide a result. They are not like you can talk forever in biblical periods. That you have to provide a result in a relatively short time. And if not, you go for the next measure, and then for the next measure, and then for the last measure. But there is something, there is a structure there that is forcing the countries, the OIM member countries, and the countries affected to provide results. So, what I would say, it would be a completely different dialogue if it is within the organization than out of the organization. Because if this dialogue doesn't take you anywhere, like the 7 months of Zapatero, didn't happen anything. Didn't happen anything. They don't have any single further request or measure or anything elsewhere to go. And now it's practically the same situation. It doesn't have any result, so what? The problem are the people. I mean, the solutions for the people. And that is what is the dialogue, is the distance between the dialogue and the solutions is getting farther and farther. So, or they adjust, they put the batteries in and they try to implement some solutions, or definitely they will be responsible for a big mess, like the big mess that is today Venezuela.
My name is Alfredo Michelena. Obviously, I'm from Venezuela. I would like to ask you a couple of questions. The first one is this question related because there is some kind of fear about what's going to happen in Venezuela. Or put it another way. The first one is that maybe some countries or some government have the fear that if they apply, if they apply, okay, if they apply the charter on Venezuela, Venezuela want to quit the OES. So there are some kind of fear that going to worsen the problem. The second fear is that if the government of Venezuela collapses, it's going to be a very difficult impact on the Caribbean because of Petrocaribe and all this ALBA transfer of money that Venezuela used to do there. And many countries prefer not to push too much because if they put too much, maybe they are going to destabilize the Caribbean. I would like to know your thoughts about those fears.
There is a thing that is the worst that you can do, and is do nothing. And I don't think we have to fear that Venezuela would quit the OES. The OES has been very important for Venezuela during all these years. In spite of the rhetoric, it has been a very important organization for them because it has allowed Venezuela to put their issues and have a sort of a political dialogue with the United States and Canada that would have been very difficult to implement anywhere else. And Ambassador Bernardo Alvarez, that was late ambassador of Venezuela to the Permanent Council, he was also the vice minister for the hemisphere. That means the importance that Venezuela has given to the organization and the importance that the organization has for Venezuela. So, I don't think that would happen. In any case, the solutions have to be implemented and the measures have to be taken. And as I said, a suspension of Venezuela is the last measure. We have a lot of work to do before in order to implement solutions. So that step, if we are reaching the end of the saga and we have not been able to achieve any solution, then definitely we need a final push. But I think that step would be the last, but there is a lot of work to be done before. And I don't think even reaching that step that Venezuela would move in that direction would be wise and would be the proper thing to do. In any case, solutions are open for them and they may do so. But it's not an immediate fear. That it was something that was trying to be solved those days. But I mean, to implement good offices or to send a diplomatic mission is not the suspension of Venezuela, and those are steps before. So those are measures that can be taken without reaching that point and Venezuela quitting. I mean, makes possible to work solutions. The problem, I think the solutions that we were requesting were precisely to help Venezuela not to collapse. Like it's collapsing now, economically and socially, and that may affect the Caribbean countries worse than anything that that could have been done in the OAS in the last 3 or 4 or 5 months. So, in any case, I have never proposed a change of government. What I propose always in Venezuela is the respect of political rights, respect of the constitution, respect of the democratic system. The decision of what government they have is a decision of the Venezuelans, and that's it. And the Venezuelan opposition has been very clear to Caribbean countries. I know that they have done some trips around telling them, you can relax if we are in government one day, we'll respect Petrocaribe, but because it's not a Bolivarian invention. Carlos Andrés Pérez had something like that before, of supporting Caribbean countries with oil. So it's something that naturally come again to be implemented.
I have a question. Sorry, it's me, Stephanie Francis. I see a lot of people in this room that I know because we are in the process of resettling some Syrian refugees here in Ottawa. As you know, Canada has been quite open about refugee resettlement, but not as well we see in the media is the migration of a lot of people from South and Central America who try to get into the U.S. Given the political climate that we see in America right now, I was wondering what the OAS could do to be sort of an honest broker or facilitator in helping to not only explain the situation in Central South America, but helping America maybe be more welcoming to some of the less fortunate.
Yes. That is, the immigration issues is quite a case, and the question of people is something very relevant in the continent. If you see, since I started my work in the organization, we have to attend some migration crises or issues like the one between Dominican Republic and Haiti. We have to send a mission to both countries. The case of Venezuela and Colombia, when something like 27,000 Colombians were sent back with very short notice, to say the least. We have the cases of the children trying to cross the border alone. We have had some messages in political campaigns around the continent, not only where we think they have been, but with a very strong speech against migration. We have been dealing also with the case of the Cubans that go without visa to Ecuador, and then they try to make all the way walking up to the United States. At least 5, 6 cases in 1 year and a half. That means it's like a permanent problem coming back and coming back. The situation of specifically from migration from the Northern Triangle and Central America is a tough case at the humanitarian point of view, about human rights violations, about person trafficking, about organized crime. It's the second more profitable business that exists in organized crime after drug, is traffic of persons in the continent. And the only way to fix that is not closing borders or building walls, is fixing the conditions at origin and trying to make the transit as good as possible. It's not easy at all because of insecurity in some of the countries, because of lack of economic opportunities. And so how you create economic opportunities and security in those countries. And that is the main task, and that is the program about the Northern Triangle that has been trying to be implemented by the Obama administration. The thing is how you support the people so far, and that is what we are trying to do, from origin to transit, trying to fix conditions, evident destination. The samples are awful, are terrible, are very bad, and very painful. A woman that must be living in the Northern Triangle may have anticonceptives and some injections because she knows that will be raped at least once or twice during the process of her migration process. So you have there some, to mention one thing, I mean, not goes to the kids and things like everything is awful, awful, terrible. And these conditions are because, of course, no state help the migrants, because no state will say, okay, let me help you to reach the United States. I mean, so it's something that definitely will have to be worked with international organizations and civil society, and trying to implement solutions with the governments. We are doing so. The initiative of the Declaration of Costa Rica is very clear in the solutions that we need to implement and the programs that we are trying to implement in order to fix that case.
Hi, my name is Claudia. I'm from Uruguay. I study here in Canada with Professor Porras. And I have a question: what is the role of OAS with the problem of violence against women in Latin America? Especially recently, with many situations, many difficulties for the government to face these problems, and also because it's a cultural problem, very typical in Latin America. Thank you.
This organization has a number of initiatives about that. We have convention, we have mechanisms to follow the convention, we have projects of cooperation with the countries, we have initiatives in order to improve legislation, we have initiatives to have conversations, talks with the judicial power in order to implement solutions about this situation. It's still a very bad. We are in very bad shape about that, and I think we have been trying to do a tough struggle against the issue, trying to get the resources in order to implement this. Is a combination of legislative power, but and judicial power, but is the branch of government. But we need also a cultural change. We need education from the very beginning. We need the kids to be educated in a different way. We need the families to operate in a different way. So it is one of the most clear cases where we have to go back to the basics, to the very basics of the social relations. And there, the very basic education, and then keep improving during the years there, and transmitting that to the family and to the rest of the members of the family. It can be achieved. It can be achieved. I think it will take a while, but it can be achieved. Like it was possible to achieve this, like environmental conscience, just providing education to children at school. So we can create this conscience to educating children at the school and to implement the solutions through the education system. That is the strategy, the main branches of the solution for this problem.
I'm told we have time for one last question in the red. Go ahead. And or the microphone, but just go ahead.
Okay, afternoon. Thanks for your very open and great answering questions. My name is Olga Barnett. I'm with INICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, as a member of the OAS. So Dr. Villalobos is here.
I mentioned you, but you were not here.
Oh.
You are right back.
I apologize for coming late.
Don't worry.
And I just wanted to know, happening on the question of migration, if we have looked at ways in which we could see the role of agriculture in development, and looking at the Americas being so well positioned to feed ourselves and feed the rest of the world, and how we interconnect the dots in terms of the challenges being faced at the social level that will affect migration, and then impact food security at the local level, so your key persons in the countries, but also looking at human rights and other policy initiatives. How we bring it all together using agriculture as a driver.
Yeah, the thing is coordinating, and we have tried to be near ICA and near IDB in the implementation of programs for the Northern Triangle. I think the way is to keep the coordination close as possible, and that will bring the partial solution. But it's right that you play a substantial role, and you have to play an even more substantial role, because most of the people affected are people in rural areas, and those that are more exposed to violence, to insecurity, are people in violent areas. Also, you have to, it's something that you have to make a combination of the work of rural areas and women. Women are the substantial, the most affected people by the violence and insecurity in those regions. And so, to provide security, to provide social stability, to provide services, and to provide a way of gaining earning, then it is a work. But it's something that is working under that pattern, and ICA is a substantial part of the solution, and is working together with the rest of us in that.
I think we'd just like to turn the floor over now to Ambassadors Duran and Cullum for some concluding remarks. Ambassador Duran.
Señor secretario de la Nación, por nosotros y sus comentarios. You've been very straightforward in what you've been saying, and we Canadians like that. Thank you. And you've covered a lot of ground. You've shared a lot of thoughts with us, both the aspirations of the OAS and the challenges and difficulties that it's facing. Now, these are obviously, you alluded to the fact that some of these are internal difficulties to the organization, others are external in the region. Now, what impressed me was the fact that most of these challenges and difficulties are the same ones we were facing 5 or 6 years ago when I was involved with the OAS. So it seems that the problems don't change, they just get worse. So good luck to you on that. Internally, you have the perennial problem of the budget, which is always underfunded, and too many mandates, because the members like to approve new mandates because they get benefits from them, but they don't like to approve budget increases because they have to pay for it. So it's a difficult situation. Compounding that is the fact that to get anything accomplished in the OAS, you have to have a consensus among the members in the permanent council to make any significant change, and that's not very easy because the members represent the region and they're polarized. They can't agree on virtually anything. So it's very challenging, Mr. Secretary. Externally, you're faced also with a polarized community. Different groups of countries are forming mini blocks, sub-regional blocks, where they detected the OAS leaving a vacuum, so they moved in to try and fill it. And then there are some of the countries who are going against and undermining the principal values of the OAS, that is the promotion of democracy and the protection of human rights. And in this case, Canadians would like to applaud you for speaking out very clearly on that and identifying Venezuela as the country that is undermining these rights more than any other country. Canadians like it when we speak frankly like that. We need more of that because it's a tradition in the Americas that we don't speak up and criticize each other. And the only way to start resolving the problem is to identify it. So we're looking for your leadership in these areas. I saw your article in the papers this morning, very well written. One thing caught my attention. You said that the hemisphere wants more Canada. Well, I think Canada and Canadians want to be more in the hemisphere too. We recognize it as the premier body, the only one that can bring together all the countries of the hemisphere around one table. And this is essential if we're going to really address the problems that face us. So I think you can look to us for more support in that respect. I'm not going to say more, solamente le quiero agradecer nuevamente su presencia y sus comentarios. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you very much, Secretary General, for being here this afternoon. I would like to restrict my comments to basically two areas, and you've touched on them a lot this afternoon. The situation in Venezuela and what you referred to at the beginning as the financial crisis facing the organization. First of all, I just would like to congratulate you for taking on the Venezuela issue as a Secretary General. You were elected to defend the charter of the Organization of American States. You were elected to defend principles of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. Unlike your predecessor, he felt that he needed the permission of the Permanent Council to defend those principles. Clearly, in my estimation, you do not. You are elected by the member states to defend those same principles. Therefore, like Paul, I would just simply like to encourage you to speak up where you see the breakdown of democracy or the systems or breakdown of human rights, wherever they may occur. Even in this country, it's where we have issues of our own. Clearly, the issue of political prisoners and the breakdown of the referendum process in Venezuela, I think, should be of great concern to the whole hemisphere. You've talked about invoking the charter as a last resort. I do think, though, that the people of Venezuela who believe in democracy are feeling left behind or not supported by the international community. And so anything that the OAS can do or anything that you can do personally to let the forces of democracy in Venezuela feel that they're not alone in the world, I think would be extremely valuable. You also mentioned the financial crisis and the 12% decrease in the budget. I would like to think that the financial crisis is a symptom of something much deeper facing the organization, and it's a lack of political will and a lack of political support from the larger donors, the larger contributors to the organization. A year and a half ago, you had a budget increase of 1.5% in Paraguay in 2014. This last year, you had a 3% increase, but you're faced with arrears, quite substantial arrears. And in previous years, you were the subject of zero nominal growth budgets going back 7, 8, 9 years in a row. So the purchasing power of the organization has fallen quite substantially. So I think we have to ask ourselves, and you and your colleagues have to ask yourselves, what is going on in the organization? Because if there's no platform to deliver all the charters and conventions that you described, you're not going to be able to deliver them or speak up on behalf of them if there's no OAS platform to deliver them from. And I would offer my opinion of why political will from Canada, the United States, Brazil, Mexico, the larger donors, has waned in recent years. I note in the budget, Canada voted against the budget increase in October, September, along with Brazil. And I would say that it's because the OAS has drifted away from its core mandates. And its core mandates and its comparative advantages are clearly, in my estimation, human rights, protection of democracy, and good governance. I think the OAS has drifted way too far in support of the integral development pillar to the expense of the organization. So combined with mismanagement of the past, plus a drift away from the core values and the core advantages of the OAS, has undermined what I think is a fundamental confidence in the organization by the larger countries of the hemisphere. And your challenge, Mr. Secretary General, if I could be so bold, and Paul Haslam referred to it in his introductory remarks, that in your first address you talked about the need to reinvigorate and revitalize the organization. And I think that indeed is a challenge. And it's a challenge that I think is worth taking on, because I think there's a lot of goodwill in the hemisphere from the citizens of the hemisphere. And you referred to more rights, more human rights for more citizens. Using that as a mantra, I think you would certainly have a lot of widespread support for revitalizing and reinvigorating the organization, but there has to be a shift back to its fundamental core values. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming to Ottawa. Really appreciate it.
On behalf of the CIPS, Center for International Policy Studies,